This week on the Salesforce Admins Podcast, we're joined by Mofeyi Oluwalana, Product Management Director at Salesforce, to talk about MuleSoft, Flow, Agentforce, and what happens when agents need to take action beyond Salesforce. Now, for Salesforce admins, this conversation matters because agents are only as useful as the data, the actions, the permissions, and the business logic they can safely reach. So Mofeyi's going to explain to us why integrations are not just about moving data from one system to another. They're about helping Salesforce connect to the real processes your business depends on. We'll talk about the questions admins should ask when working with other platform owners, how to think about triggers and data mapping, and why business context is so important when you're designing actions for humans and agents. So give this episode a listen, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with another Salesforce admin who's maybe thinking about how Salesforce could connect to the rest of their business. And with that, let's get Mofeyi on the podcast. So Mofeyi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited. We don't do a whole lot of episodes outside of core platform. And I know my Salesforce admins, the Salesforce admins of the world, work everywhere. And especially now with Agentforce and agents and really just the whole bringing people together and giving a complete view of data, integrating data and working with MuleSoft and tools like that are super important. So I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad we got connected. But let's start off and learn a little bit about you. What was your path to Salesforce and becoming a product management director?
Yes. So I started at Salesforce a little over 4 years ago. I actually came through the APM program, also known as the Associate Product Manager program. It's a 2-year rotational program for folks coming out of university, getting their start in product. So I was able to come in through that program. I did 3 rotations all across Salesforce. I spent some time in Commerce Cloud, working on how to run promotions on Black Friday.
Oh,
and I spent a lot of time in experience services, thinking about how we can make it easier for marketers to build nice looking emails. And I ultimately landed in MuleSoft, which is where I continued working with the MuleSoft team on how to make it easier for our customers to connect the systems that they need to, both for traditional use cases, but also for the agentic ones as well.
Yeah. It's funny. For the longest time in my career, I worked retail, and the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday was always the busiest day. And then I got into tech and I was like, I don't have to work Black Friday.
Guess what? Never.
Well, and then I kind of realized that oh man, I was a retail associate. There's still computers that have to be had. So I have a soft spot in my heart for all of the people that on Black Friday have to sweat it out and make sure that servers don't go down. So
exactly.
Checks and barcodes and everything can happen on the other end.
Yeah, I never realized how complex it could mean to calculate hundreds of thousands of carts when there were promotions running on Black Friday. But it's more complicated than one may think.
Right. And then there's people like me that add stuff to a cart, and I'll come back to it a little bit later. No, there's somebody, you're using up the last bit of, I don't know. He probably doesn't know that. But yeah, and then I'm also old school retail when you used to have to verify checks and put them through little check readers. And now everything's a credit card or a tap or a thumbprint.
All of the above.
All of the above. But it's all of the above because we're integrating data and we're doing stuff with MuleSoft. So, I threw together some questions, but let's start off with, where should admins start when thinking about products like Flow and MuleSoft and Agentforce together?
Yeah. The journey with MuleSoft starts the moment that your agent wants to do anything outside of Salesforce, right? I think MuleSoft is the connector, so to speak. If you have data that your agents need to reach in your ERP. If you have actions your agents need to be able to take with your payment provider, how exactly will they be able to do that? Now, when agents and agentic technology became a thing, a lot of people were of this opinion that, well, agents are smart enough to just understand platform APIs, right? Where agents can read the specifications, figure out the commands that they need to execute, and do all the things that they need to do to be successful. We very quickly realized that agents are really smart, but at the end of the day, they're limited by the information that they know and the tools that they have access to. So it's not sufficient to just give your agents a platform API spec. That's not going to cut it. Your agents need integrations and APIs that they can directly invoke that map to your business logic. They need this because not every organization operates the same. For one retail provider, creating an order is very different from other retail providers. And understanding that business vocabulary is really important when building, agents that actually bring value. And that's really where MuleSoft and Flow come into the picture. You have actions that your agents need to be able to take in order to execute a certain business process. Well, that action is really just an API. And we serve those APIs so your agents are able to do those things.
Yeah. It's kind of, I've always thought of Josh, who's on my team, keeps us in check with helping us understand stuff. And what you just described would be like as if you brought somebody new on and said, well, here's a phone and a phone book. And if you have problems, the phone number's in the phone book. And the agent's kind of the same way. If you're just saying, here's all the specs and the APIs you can call, go figure it out. It's almost like handing them this giant phone book and just saying, well, you're smart, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that, like, for a retailer, creating an order may not just be creating that order record. Creating an order may be, I create the order record, and then I send a notification out via email that says, hey, this is your order. And then after that, I create an invoice. Like, there are a number of steps that happen. And how do you codify those steps? Well, it's not enough to just give an agent, again, the phone book and the numbers. It's much better and much more reliable to give them the actual workflow or the API they can use to execute that entire process.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I've run into, so back when I was doing some integrations as an admin, we had, different third-party tools that were being used. One thing that I didn't know to ask, and I'm hoping you can help Salesforce admins kind of like, here's the questions you need to ask. We had an instance and we need to connect it to our financial backend, which ran, not on Salesforce. I had to find the owner of that, which I didn't know existed. The other thing I didn't know to ask was I didn't know what to ask. And so, as we work through different scenarios, you brought up like, well, they want to, take the cart and order the stuff. The orders could be fulfilled in a different system. There could be a warehouse system. What are some of the questions that, like, when the admin's sitting down with a business owner and they're saying, here's what I want in Salesforce, and I'd really like to be able to pull up the orders. And the admin's like, okay, now I need MuleSoft because I need to integrate another system. And I got to go talk to that system's owner. What are some of the questions they should ask? And what is some of the information they need to kind of provide so that they can start setting up that relationship?
Yeah, I think it first starts with defining what data are you actually looking for, right? A large part of building integrations between these two systems is I have some data in the financial system. I have my CRM data in Salesforce. How do those two things map together? Mm-hmm. So I think the first step is what data are you looking for? And what is the mapping between, what you're trying to do from a CRM perspective with whatever may be happening in that financial system? So to me, it starts with the data. I think the next question to ask is, what is the trigger? What it starts off this process, right? Is it someone sending a message in a Slack channel? Is it this order being created within your ERP? What is it that triggers this process to happen? That you build the trigger, then you identify what the data mapping is between the source, being that financial system, and the target. And that's really how you get towards that working integration.
Now, when I sit down with another platform owner and I talk about using MuleSoft, we can bring, so this is where you're going to quickly hear Mike's knowledge run out of gas because here's where Mike's knowledge hits the wall. But we can bring that data in and it can be kind of like a pane of glass, right? Like we can just view that data, or we could actually copy that data over so that we can use it in reports. And then we could also extend that conversation with the platform owner and say, well, if somebody wants to change something, they could change that in Salesforce, and then Salesforce with MuleSoft can push that data change back to that platform. How'd I do?
I think you're almost there.
Okay, fill me in, because I what I don't know is what I don't know, and I feel like there's other admins that may not know this as well.
I think the best way to think about MuleSoft is that real-time app integration layer. So
Okay.
not necessarily the data that you want to live in Salesforce, because getting that unified customer view is really important. And so you'll need, the connectors and the data connectors in place to get data from external systems into Salesforce. That is one use case, and one that Data Cloud solves really well. The problem that MuleSoft solves really well in tandem with Agentforce is the agent needs to take real-time action, right? Again, so let's say we're going back to the retail example where I create an order. Mm-hmm. If order management doesn't happen in Salesforce, right? Creating an order doesn't necessarily mean starting that process within the Salesforce ecosystem. I just want to be able to kick off that process with my OMS, my warehouse, my shipping provider. Then in that case, it's real-time app integration. It's using the APIs that MuleSoft has to be able to kick off that workflow and that process using your agents. So it's a little bit different than, moving data just from one place to another.
No, I think that's also very important because companies have spent money on those systems. And I remember when I was sitting down with our finance team, they're like, well, if this data lives here and in Salesforce, what's the source of truth? And we set it up so that we were just viewing the data because we really wanted sources of truth within the organization. But sometimes, the user lives and dies within one interface, and kind of where that data comes from, we don't need that exposed to them. So
exactly. And I think it's the use case for consolidating data into one place is a little bit different from the use case of making sure that your agents can take action, right? And so I think as part of that rationalization that admins and IT teams have to do is what data do I need to drive what? And what actions do my agents need in order to be successful? And as part of that, then can separate it into those two camps and then move forward with the tools that help them do so.
Cool. Now, when you connect MuleSoft with other systems, does the admin need to ask for, can you provide like a certain API, or is it like that's how it's set up, right? Or walk me through it, because I've never set it up, and I feel like I'm completely happy being the host of the podcast that asks the questions that admins are like, oh, I'm so glad he asked that because I didn't know to ask that question, and I didn't want to look stupid in front of my IT people.
Yeah, so I think from the business side, we set the requirements about, okay, this is what I need. This is the process that I need done. These are the steps that should happen. This is what should trigger that, right? You do that definition. Then you can work with the IT team or the API developer to actually make that happen. Now, the API developer has access to a number of connectors within MuleSoft. that enable them to build these APIs and integrations without relying on, what is the API specification for my OMS system, or what is the API
Gotcha.
specification for my finance system. There are connectors that have a ton of different actions that you can orchestrate within a MuleSoft integration to get a certain job done. So one example that I like to use is the Salesforce connector. The Salesforce connector has a ton of different triggers. Let's say when a new object is created, or on when a record is modified, right? That can trigger the integration. The Salesforce connector also has a bunch of actions or operations. So I can create a record in Salesforce. I can delete a record in Salesforce. I can create a topic in Salesforce. All of the different actions that you can execute through Salesforce APIs extrapolated into a connector so that it's easier to build and then manage these integrations. So the API developer is in charge of translating those business requirements, right, into the integration composed of those connectors that allow you to achieve exactly that.
Gotcha. Boy, there's a lot. Sometimes it feels like there's a lot to it, and we make it look so simple in demos.
Yeah, I will say it's much easier looking at a screen and hearing an audio podcast of what this really is. But I like to think of them as MuleSoft gives the tools, those building blocks. You can compose those building blocks in a certain order to create a workflow. Those are the integrations that you can use and your agents can also use to take action.
Yeah, I mean that's always I always think of it as, admins are managing users and agents are just like users. They have to have instructions and guardrails and guidelines for how to operate and what they can and can't do. Same way that people have as well. I'd love to know. So, as a product manager, you got into the program. How has being a product manager, helped you understand the product, but also given you a different perspective of, working through explaining different customer stories or use cases?
I would say the best, and I'm obviously biased, but the best part about being a product manager is just the sheer amount of data points that you see. One of the things that I think is really important is, as part of being a product manager, is meeting with as many customers as you possibly can. Because it's through those customer conversations that there are very clear themes that you can draw, not only of how people use the product, but what the product doesn't quite solve for yet. And so going through those conversations has helped me not only understand those customer pain points better, but then understand the things that we need to do in the product to make it even easier for our customers to use.
Yeah, no, I often feel when I was exposed for a brief 6 months as a consultant that a lot of the pain points customers have always felt kind of the same. I was like, man, they have the same problem that XYZ has, and kind of at the end of the day, you'd look at all the customers you manage, you're like, they have these 5 problems. And then brand new, somebody would come in and you're like, and you have completely different use case and requirements and don't fall into those same 5 problems that I've been solving all day, which is kind of nice. So I'd be curious, as admins are looking more and more at building, they build agents and apps on the platform and they extend the platform and they use MuleSoft. What are things that you're thinking about as a product manager for, wow, I have to be a year out or 2 years out? How should admins be thinking about, their building and management of the Salesforce platform as a product?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is not just building for where we are today, but building for what's coming. I think the one thing that agents and AI technology has taught us is that the technology market is changing so fast. There's going to be a new model. There's going to be some new capability that you want to be able to leverage. And in order to do so, the foundation and the platform that you're building on has to be interoperable. It has to be able to withstand some of those changes that you want to make. The example I always like to give is if having to change a model is going to disrupt your operations, that is an issue. And we know that is an issue because LLM models, a new one comes up every day, another one is deprecated every other week. So I think the most important thing thinking about the platform is how do I make the platform resilient and flexible so that as these new capabilities come into play, I'm actually able to use them and really take advantage of them within my organizations.
That's very good advice. I bet I'm just going to guess, and maybe I'm wrong, and we can move on. As a product manager, you probably do a lot of presenting, both to customers and probably internally. I know admins have to do that as well. What would be some advice you would have for admins that are presenting either a new solution or proposing something to their stakeholders?
The most important thing when I walk into any room, small or large, regardless of the stakeholder, is who are they and what do they care about? It's easy to get lost as a product manager. It's very easy to get lost in, I actually think this is an amazing idea. And I talked to 10 customers and I know it's going to be valuable for them. But your ability to, persuade and influence is largely due to your understanding of the three things that the people that you're talking to care about and helping them align what you're talking about to those three things. A great example is that when you talk to your COO, I will guess that what it will come down to how much does it cost the organization and how much money is it going to make me, right? So talking to your COO is not the same conversation that you'll have with support. Who cares about, okay, is this going to make it easier for me to support my customers? Does this make us more reliable, right? So you need to change the delivery to really match the things that you're being evaluated on when you're presenting to an audience, when you're presenting to internal stakeholders and external ones as well.
That's really good advice because I can tell you right now, I am guilty as charged of walking into a room thinking, I have the answer and this is the most important thing that they're ever going to want to hear, and forgetting that they probably had their own goals and I just blew right past them and kept talking about something else entirely. Bad. So one thing that I find talking with people that work in tech is we always have hobbies or things that we like to do on the side that are very tactile. I know I've interviewed a product manager that smelted pewter.
Wow.
That's the extreme case. I always bring it up because it sounds interesting. And, who hasn't walked past some sort of pewter chessboard with its little figurines and thought that would be cool, except I'm not going to pay a few $100s for it. But I'm wondering if there's anything interesting that you have as a hobby that you would love to share with people.
Unfortunately, I'm not nearly as interesting as the guest that you just mentioned.
It's not a contest. It's not a contest.
It feels like one. Just kidding. I won't say I'm tactile as I'd like to just stay mobile. As a lot of the folks who work in tech, we sit on our butts all day looking at computer screens. So wherever possible, I like to just go outside, get some fresh air, do some movement, whether that be running, yoga, or similar. That's my anchor. Again, not as interesting, but it helps me, it regulates me nevertheless.
It's still super valuable. I think I was just talking with a coworker the other day about our grandparents, and so-and-so's grandparents lived to be 89, and they were outside in the sun all day, and they had bacon and eggs for breakfast, and I thought to myself, well, yeah, and then they probably worked it off all day because they were, everybody was thin back then, and the worst thing they could do was sit down at a desk like I do, and so who would have thought that there was ever a need for a treadmill desk? I think back to that Back to the Future quote: "You run for fun." Right?
Exactly.
So no, that's really good. And what's great, I've had a few colleagues as well take calls while they're walking, and I think the benefit of of being in tech is that you can do calls like that and work through, as long as you're not working through maybe architecture diagrams for a MuleSoft integration. That would probably be pretty bad. So,
or if it's windy outside and you don't have a great mic. But
yeah.
I'm also a big proponent of just walking outside and taking as many meetings as I can.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No. Well, I would just say windy at all, because I have yet to find a mic that's doesn't make it sound like you're walking through a NASA wind tunnel.
Maybe that's the next startup.
I'm telling you, the fuzzies
wind
that come on mics, there's got to be something better. There's
I
got to be
agree.
something better.
I agree.
I don't need to have a big mustache just to talk into a microphone. Well, it was great chatting with you. I learned a lot. I feel like I tried to ask some of the silly questions that I know admins would want to ask. There's probably plenty of admins out there that have done some MuleSoft integrations, but I know when I had to sit down with other platform owners and be like, I need your thing to plug into Salesforce, and I don't know how to make you do that, but you figure it out. I always wanted to ask the silly questions so that when they sit down, they know what to say and can have a better relationship, because, in every aspect of the sense, there's other platform owners within organizations, and they're all trying to do right by each other. So that being said, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing that with us, and we'll have to come back and talk more MuleSoft maybe after Dreamforce for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm biased, obviously, but always love talking the world of MuleSoft and integrations, because it truly feels even more relevant than ever with agents and the technology.
Absolutely. Big thanks to Mofeyi for joining us and really helping make MuleSoft Flow and Agentforce feel more approachable. And, I wasn't afraid to ask the questions that you shouldn't be afraid to ask. The big takeaway for admins: when agents need to act outside of Salesforce, your understanding of the business process, the data, the triggers, and the right system of truth matters now more than ever. That's how you keep Salesforce accurate, current, trusted, and useful for the business. Now, be sure to subscribe to the Salesforce Admins podcast. If you haven't already, share this episode. Hey, share it with your team. And then keep asking those questions that help your org connect the right systems in the right way. Until next time, we'll see you in the cloud.